Live!
Bingo. Go
All
for it.
right. Welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, where, not surprisingly, we are here to talk about marketing, science fiction, and fantasy. Let me give you a little introduction. This is our very first podcast, our inaugural. Some of us have never podcasted before at all. So um, there are four of us. And what we decided to do for the first 4 weeks is, instead of interviewing other authors, we're going to interview each other. So basically the format's going to be is every week we're going to have a guest author, and we're going to talk to them about what works and what doesn't work. And these are going to be authors in science fiction and fantasy, obviously. So what we're going to do, like I said, is interview each other. So this week our guest is Lindsay Buroker, and I will allow Lindsay to introduce herself in a lot more detail in a bit. But first, let's do some real quick introductions. Jeffrey,
Hi,
tell us about yourself.
my name is Jeffrey M. Poole. I live here in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, otherwise known as Land of Eternal Air Conditioners. I'm a fantasy author. I've written two series. One is the Bakken Chronicles, which got me started in all this, and I've just recently created my Tales of Lantari section. I've put out 5 books, working on the sixth, and never in a million years would have thought I'd made it this far.
Joe, you're up.
Uh, my name is Joseph Lalo, Joseph R. Lalo, and I am the author of the Book of Deacon series, as well as that's a fantasy series. I've also got a sci-fi series called Big Sigma, and there's a third book coming out in that in a couple of months. And I've got a few side projects too, and I've been writing since 2010. And this is my first podcast that I am a part of the production staff of, so to speak.
Okay. I'm Laura Kerwin, and I am the newbie of the group. And I write an urban fantasy series called The City. The second book is due to come out, estimated date's November 15th. I think I'm going to make that deadline easily. It may come out a little bit before that. I've also very recently started working on a collaboration project with another author in an urban fantasy kind of genre, and I can't give you any details because we have literally just started talking about it, but I'm very excited about it. So, but I am the brand newbie, and I have never been interviewed in a podcast. I have done nothing but listen to podcasts, so this is all total first for me. So, Lindsay, so we're going to let you go ahead, tell us about yourself, what you work on, your various series, and then we're going to go into the topic, which is going to be talking about why writing in series, the marketing advantages to writing in series versus writing standalone, and also why science fiction and fantasy are particularly good genres for writing in series. So, Lindsay, take it away.
Hey guys, Lindsay Buroker here. I have to talk about myself, apparently. This is always fun to do on the first episode, be the guinea pig. I started self-publishing in December of 2010. I actually remember Joe Lalo. I remember seeing his stuff doing really well back then. I was like, I got to figure out what that guy's doing. But I did my first novel, The Emperor's Edge, that month, and at that point I didn't have a big trunk, backlist of books to try out. But I've managed to write 16 novels since then. Most are kind of high fantasy, set in a steam age setting. I have one more recent series where I actually tried to write steampunk, and it's got people flying and airplanes and stuff like that. But just a secondary world fantasy for the most part. And I've been doing this full time since I was about a year into it, and it's been interesting and fun to keep experimenting with the marketing and seeing what works and which things kind of always work. And if you're on top of the game, you can kind of see new things that come along that you might be able to take advantage of. And I never seem to be able to do those because a lot of them involve being exclusive with Amazon, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot. But you can definitely make it just slowly building up a fan base too, and I hope to talk about that today also.
Okay. So, somebody got a question? You guys got a question?
I wrote mine down on my handy dandy
All right.
mobile device here, so just a
Okay.
moment.
Go for it.
Okay. Lindsay, have you ever felt any obligation to keep a series going when you think the story has been finished?
Yes. I think probably every author that's had a series that does well to some extent, I'm sure there's pressure to, you may think it's done, but it's also kind of your bread earner. For me, that's the Emperor's Edge series, and I finished it with 7 books, which I thought finished the arc. It was supposed to be 6 books as it was. But and then last year, I was kind of freaking out because I was like, what do I write next? You know, and I tried to do a bunch of sort of pilot novels, and they were doing okay. I feel lucky to have a fan base that a lot of people will actually try new things. They're not just married to that one series. But just I decided I'd do one more book in the series, and it ended up being this 220,000 word epic monster with 6 point of view characters. And I don't usually write really epic fantasy. I tend to write more swords and sorcery style with 1 or 2 point of view characters. So this was quite the beast, and the alarming part was that it's gotten really good reviews. So it's like people expect more like that. I don't know. I'm not touching 6 point of view characters again for a while though. That was it was difficult to get the stories of everybody's stories to come together. But yeah, answer the question, you know, definitely. And I think there's series too where I've started them and thought, I'm not sure I'm going to continue them, because like I was saying, I like to do like a pilot book just to test the waters. But then you get people that like that series, and then like, when are you ready for the next one? When's the next one coming out? You're like, never. But, so now I'm doing like 5 series. I don't know. It's crazy. But it helps to be prolific if you want to write in a lot of series, for sure.
I have one other kind of side-related question here. Based on my own stuff, I only will write about people that I know. So, are your characters based on any real people, real-life people that you know? And if so, who did you base Sicarius off of?
No, I've actually had that question, and I've never really done that with like friends or real people I know. Although I was in the Army for 4 years to pay for college, and I've killed a certain drill sergeant 3 or 4 times in various incarnations now. So that's the nice thing about being an author. You know, you can make somebody a villain and kill them off. You just add an A to the end of their name or something to fantasy it up, right? But I've gotten ideas from characters in movies and TV shows before. I think that, I don't know, you get the quirks and things. I like to add little quirks. And my main character in my main series, Amaranth, has a kind of a cleaning fetish. She's a little OCD, so she's actually found clues and things because she's like straightening things up in the bad guy's den, and while they're supposed to be spying and getting something else. And I think I got that from the series Monk when that was on. I got a kick out of that character. So I said, well, let me not make her quite that crazy, but take it one of those traits. And I think little quirks like that can make it fun and make characters more memorable. So.
And my final question is, every author inevitably faces this. What are 3 things you do to resolve writer's block?
You know, I think there's actually there's the people that get writer's block, and then there's the people who have so many ideas that it's more like, how do I make myself focus on this today? I would say the main thing, though, I have, like, when I first got started, I used to get stuck a lot. I'd write maybe 30,000 words of a novel, and my characters would be in some dark dungeon with no way out, and so I'd kind of say, forget that, and 6 months later I'd start writing something new. So I think outlining is just something I've gradually come to embrace. I was always thought of myself as more of a pantser. You know, I don't need to outline. Who needs to outline? That's for losers. But now, especially trying to write more, this last year I tried to write like 5,000 to 10,000 words a day when I'm working on a rough draft. And that's something that came with outlining, just really getting it down what the next couple scenes are going to be, so that when you sit down to write, you know exactly what's going to happen. And if you are stuck, I find that like the treadmill or walking my dogs or just getting away from the computer and kind of, I think with walking or running, you get that forward momentum thing, and maybe it kicks your brain into forward motion too. And sometimes that'll be a good place to solve problems and figure out what your characters have to do next.
Thank you.
No problem.
Come on, Joe, you're up.
Okie doke. We touched on this a little bit earlier. You have multiple series, and do you think having a whole lot of series is more of a strength or a weakness? Like, are there going to be rivalries between fans of different series, and do you have a hard time making everyone happy?
This is actually, I like this question because I was actually thinking of doing a blog post on this recently. It's one of those pros and cons kind of things. If you're not prolific, if it takes you a year or 3 years or 5 years to write a novel, it's probably not a good idea to start a bunch of different series. But if you are, is it still maybe a good idea or not? Because you can get a lot of momentum, especially on Amazon, if you put out books really regularly, once every month or two, because your book appears on the hot new releases for 30 days, and then it tends to fall off the cliff, as some people say, if you're
Yep.
lucky enough to get on the list to start with. But so there's really something to be said for just knocking out a series and writing several books in rapid succession if you can, if that's your style. But at the same time, if you're new to this and you don't have a fan base built up yet, you could be working on a series and just saying, I'm going to write this 6 or 8 book epic series, and before I move on to something else. And what if it doesn't take off? I actually remember talking to somebody early on that had written 10 books in a series, and he was always complaining about, I just can't get any momentum. Nobody's buying my books. I've tried all the advertising and all that. And, I think that can happen. One idea takes off, and one other one, like I have cases where I think my better books are my least well selling books. So you don't necessarily know ahead of time what's going to be the hit, or even if it's not a big hit, what can get you into that solid mid-list author range where you do start to grow a fan base. So, it's really up to the personality of the person too. I really have a hard time like I said, I wrote 3 books in my steampunk series this last year that was never supposed to be a series, but that's another story. And I really did see that effect. For a while there, I had 1, 2, and 3 in the steampunk top 100 on Amazon. And before you think that means I was making millions of dollars, let me just say the steampunk category is not that big. But it was a lot of visibility by being up there that really surprised me that those books did as well as they did for quite a while. But now I've shifted over to writing something, a book 2 in a different series, and I'm starting a pen name project. So now it's been like 3 months since the last one of those books came out, which is not a huge long time if you think about it compared to traditional publishing, but it's definitely been enough time for those books to fall down, so I'll have to kind of start up again with marketing it when I'm ready to publish the 4th one in that series. So it's like it can go either way. There's pros and cons. It just depends. And I think if you do kind of write a couple of pilots early on, you maybe can see which has the most potential and think either of them could be a series, and just whatever gets the best ratings, whatever people email you about and say, I really like these characters, I want to see what happens next. So, like I said, it's up to the individual author. So, just throwing stuff out there.
Yep. All right. Now, I've noticed, like you were saying earlier, you had a 200,000 word behemoth, and I know that you have a lot of shorter stuff too. What do you think works better, the shorter stuff or the longer stuff?
I think my first series, the Emperor's Edge books, they are all over 100,000 words. When I was first thinking I would have to look for an agent and do all that stuff, I was, hating that they were so long, because everything out there said first fantasy novel from a first-time author should only be 80 to 100,000 words, and we will not consider anything higher than this, and blah blah blah. So I got the first one down to 105,000 words, and then they crept up from there, which I think often happens to people as they write a series, and you end up adding more characters, and there's just more people that want to blab and have something to say. But I think that's a pretty good length for fantasy, 100 to 125,000 words. But my more recent stuff has been more around 80,000 words. I think my shortest was the one that wasn't supposed to launch a series was 75,000 words. I was doing kind of a steampunk romance, and that's all I planned to do. I didn't plan a series or anything. It was just going to be a one-off. But it actually did pretty well, so I went back to the world. But I do think that now you can't necessarily charge twice as much just because a book is twice as long. So you got to think about, does it really make sense? If you're writing 200,000 words, maybe there's a place in the middle that you could break it in half and make it into 2 books. I actually did that with the 6 and 7 in my Emperor's Edge series. That was supposed to be one story. It would have been 250,000 words. And that particular story had a good place to break it. Actually, it was a horrible place according to the fans because there was a big cliffhanger, but I thought that was a wonderful place. And it just seemed like a real natural place to break it. So I said, let's make this 2 books, and nobody ever complained. Nobody said like, oh, I'm getting ripped off. I have to pay $5 for part 1 and part 2, because even separated, they were both over 100,000 words. But then with the 200,000 one, there wasn't really a neat, tidy place to separate it. So I just decided to make it one big book, and I did charge $1 more. I usually do $3.99 for my shorter ebooks, like around 70, 80,000 words, $4.99 or $4.95 or something for the 100,000 word ones, and I made this one $5.95, and nobody complained about it. At that point, it's the 8th book in the series, so they're probably into it, and definitely you can say you didn't get that many words. I mean, you can kill chihuahuas with that thing if you want. I've got a paperback somewhere. It's pretty good size, the Create Space 6x9 trade paperback or whatever, so it's good.
Excellent. I was going to ask you about prices too. I didn't have that on my little list here, but I'm glad you talked about that, because I just my next book is going to be a little bit higher. I was a little afraid I was going outside the appropriate range. All right, my last question here is your selection on what to write next based on marketing, or is it just based on what you'd like to write next? Like, is it a preference thing, or you try to decide what will sell well?
I spend time on the Kindle boards, kboards.com forum, and just read quite a few author blogs. And I always know, I'm like, this is what's hot, this is what's great. I could make a lot of money writing this. And then I'm just like, I'm so uninterested in writing about these things. So every time I try to write something that's even vaguely commercial, because I was going to do a contemporary romance set on the Olympic Peninsula, and I did. I actually published that. But by the end of the first chapter, and I've told this story online before, there was like a dead, decapitated chicken on the hero's front porch of her guest cottage, and I was thinking, I don't think this is a romance thing. So it kind of turned more into a mystery. It's hard to classify now. I don't know how to advertise it. So if I ever go back and do more
romance books had decapitated chickens, I might actually pick up one.
Yeah, really.
Butchered animals, they're really sexy, So, and every time I have a kind of a friend. Go ahead, sorry.
So.
I was gonna say also I have a fantasy series that. The one I just published, the second one of Rust and Relics, it was supposed to be kind of towards that urban fantasy, contemporary fantasy readership, which I think there's a lot more, it's easier to do well in that than epic fantasy, and it's easier to do well in epic fantasy than steampunk. I've just never really in the popular areas, but so I tried, and it ended up being more science fiction-y and not really, there's no werewolves, there's no zombies, it's just, what are you going to do? So. I always have great ideas about what could be hot for the market, but it just doesn't seem to be my thing to want to write what's really sort of popular and trendy. And I'm sure there are readers readers are happy with that. But so all the power to those who do enjoy those things. If that's what you enjoy writing, great, you've got an advantage. But I'm happy that it is possible now, especially with self-publishing, to make enough money writing sort of the less popular stuff. You can still find readers, and if you probably have to be more prolific. You're probably not going to write one novel a year and just hit it out of the ballpark with your male romance set in 20,000 Battlestar Galactica. I don't know, whatever. Some weird little niche. But you can make money. There are people who are looking for that. I'm not even joking. There's an audience for whatever you think of it to write. There's an audience out there.
Laura, you're up.
All right. Well, I wanted to talk about, because since the topic on this is marketing, specifically marketing, I'd like you to ask you about the specific marketing advantages to series. I mean, what is it that makes them easier to sell than standalone books, in your experience?
Okay, yeah, that's actually the topic of the show, so we should talk about that. No, there's just a lot of advantages. I think it's actually really hard as an indie author to make it with standalone books. And if you think about it, there's only probably a handful of traditionally published authors, like maybe Neil Gaiman or in nonfiction Malcolm Gladwell, some people that have really become so well known as authors that you'll read anything by them. And that's great if you can have a style and really attract a fan base. But with a series, you get people really involved and invested in the characters. And I think in fantasy and science fiction in particular, you have readers that grew up reading trilogies, and they expect the storyline to be big and epic, and you're taking time to build up a world. And I actually think it's funny how many romance novels there are right now that are part of a series. They're like, there's these 8 brothers, and this is going to be how every one of them finds a woman. And It seems like you really have to stretch it in some genres.
Yeah.
But in mystery, I think that's another one that lends itself well to series. I remember reading those Cat Who, whatever, Red Papers or Solved Crimes books, Lillian Jackson Braun, I think, when I was growing up, and people fall in love with the character, the cats, whatever. I should probably
that was
have
actually
cats.
going to be one of my questions for you, was the how you define a series. Does it have to be a story arc that covers the whole volume, all your 7, in my case I'm trying to do 7, a story arc that covers all of that, or do you get the same advantage from writing the way they do in mysteries, where you have like one detective, and you may refer back to earlier cases, but you can read that one book without necessarily having to read all the other ones to get the story. Do you get the same advantage from that? Do you have any sense of that?
I think you can do both, but I've definitely seen it's more powerful when there's kind of a greater arc, especially people that do serials where there may be shorter 30,000 word, episodes each week or something, and if there's a cliffhanger at the end, the reviewers might hate it. They might say this sucks, 1 star cliffhanger, this author's trying to gouge us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're going by the next book. So I rarely, I'm like maybe 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 books ends up in a cliffhanger for me. And it's just more of a tease of a kind of, oh, this is what might happen in the next one. But I do think that both ways can be effective. Maybe the people that do like to write cliffhangers or have a greater story going on have a little bit more of an advantage, just because people get to the end and it's, and we could argue more in the future about whether you should do that, whether each story should be really a complete story. And I do think it should. I think you can make each one feel complete and yet still have, there's more for the character to do, or the evil bad guy is still waiting out there to get her, that kind of thing.
I try to leave like unknotted strings, that are, so anyway, so with looking at the series, talk about, I'm assuming that the thing with the series is it just gets easier with every book. What was your experience, and when did you get the idea that, wow, this is a better way to go than trying to do standalone books? Was there any aha moment, or is it just something you...
Actually, let me go back and add on to the first question as far as marketing goes. One other thing you get to do with series is you can start playing around with pricing a lot, and use the first book as either a free book or a 99-cent book. And the second book, you might run a sale on it. And just there's a lot of sites out there. A lot of the listeners have probably heard of BookBub and Pixel of Ink, and a lot of these sites that specifically want books that are discounted. That's what they want to share with their readership. So it gives you an opportunity to discount the first one in order to get more readers to try it and possibly go on to buy your $5 ebooks, where you can actually make some money. So there's a lot of advantages
that's how
there.
Mine took off. I saw one of your podcasts or your blog posts there, Lindsay. I think I might have told you this a couple of years ago, where you said if you have more than 1 book in the same series, consider making the first one free just to get it out there. Then if they like it, they might be inspired to go look for number 2. And that's what happened on mine, and it just blew up exponentially. So for that, I've been totally grateful.
I'll expect you to buy me dinner when I make it to Lake Havasu. Is that what it was? All right, but
you're on.
yeah, and we'll have to talk about Kindle Unlimited some in the future, because that's sort of changing things and maybe making people less into looking for the free books, because they're getting stuff for free anyway. But I think it still can be useful, and it's one of those things sometimes authors really reject or object to the idea of making any of their stuff free. Why would I give this away? This is so much work went into this. And first thing I would say is just it's not like it has to be forever. Especially if you are in KDP Select, you can do a Kindle countdown deal and just make it free for a couple days. But even if you're doing the perma-free, which is just in case anybody doesn't know, if you have your books for sale everywhere and make them free on the other retailers like Kobo and Apple, Amazon should eventually come along and price match it, because as you know, you can't just make it free in the Kindle dashboard as of this time. But this used to be kind of take forever thing, because it relies on Amazon's little bots going out there and happening to notice that the price is cheaper elsewhere. But it's actually pretty quick now. Smashwords, which I go through to get into Sony, Apple, and Kobo I go to direct now that that's possible. Naughty doggy.
Yeah, my father like shut a door somewhere, so now he's freaking out. So anyway.
Yeah. But so it doesn't take that long anymore. Like if you make it perma-free, you could just do it for a week or 2 weeks and then switch it back to whatever price you're comfortable with. So, why not try it?
Right.
And,
I can also mention that when it comes to Amazon getting your book free, there's a handy dandy little link there that says, tell us of a lower price. So if by chance, say, you make your book free on Smashwords and it filters down through all the retailers, you can provide a link to Barnes & Noble's link to your book there, which is already free, and it's guaranteed to make it free a lot quicker, because now that you have something to back it up with.
Be good.
Yeah, you be good, Laura's dog. I'm just laughing because mine are sleeping.
I don't have children, So.
Yeah, well, I'm sure a coyote will go by or something, and mine will start.
Yeah,
barking.
right. Yeah, no, someone will drive a golf cart.
We live in different neighborhoods. I have
So,
coyotes, you have golf carts.
Yeah. I had a question. It just fell out of my head while I was messing with the dog.
I interrupted you, so.
I was going to say, on the free, well, let me back up and ask this question. I mean, you started, when did you put your first book out, 2010?
December of 2010, and I want to tell the readers right now, when I got started, readers, listeners, whatever you guys are, when I got started, I'm like, it's way too late. I've totally missed the boat, because in 2009 was when Amanda Hawking had her big blow up, and like when I started, they were saying, oh, 99 cents doesn't work anymore. It used to be the magic thing. So I swear, every year there's something that's great and that you can exploit, and then it goes away, and it's like the sky is falling. But so if you're just starting now, it's not too late.
No. Well, I was gonna ask you what are the differences that you've seen? Because starting in 2010, you're like one of the elder, stateswomen of self-publishing. Considering how quickly things are changing. What have you? Like what worked in the beginning that just doesn't work anymore? Is there anything specific you can point to, or?
I would say.
I'm looking for ideas.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of funny because the things I started out doing still work. It's just it's kind of a slow build. I think a lot of what I did is when I've made that first book free, I decided I'd make it free everywhere. I put it on Scribd and it's on Wattpad. I have the first 3 books on Wattpad, and I just wanted to have it out there everywhere. And I made a free audiobook version through podiobooks.com. I did the first 3 books that way. So people could just randomly find it in iTunes and start listening, which have
you found that to be helpful?
A lot of people have emailed me and said that's how they first found me, and I get emails. I feel bad because I haven't finished the series because the lady that was narrating it got really busy and couldn't keep going, and I've kind of tried a couple others and haven't found anybody I like as much yet. But every now and then I get email from people who can't, are visually impaired or something, and that's all they have, so I feel really guilty. I'm like, I am going to get the rest of the series done.
I'm curious too about the difference. Did you choose Podio over Audible? Was there a specific reason, or just Podio was the one that came to your attention first? Or I'm just curious if you've noticed any difference between the different platforms and if one's better than the other.
Well, Audible is Amazon's, they own it, and that's for pay. So Podiobooks is free. You're putting your stuff out there. It's kind of like a podcast. Each chapter you might put out each week, or you can just put. I think now Podiobooks is switched, so they just put the whole complete book out at once, which is actually too bad. I think you build up a fan base when you do it every week and become something people look forward to. But I've definitely still have people today that it's, all the little things that you can do that will be out there forever are to your advantage. Like I did that 4 years ago now, or 3 years ago, and I still have people that find those, and that's a way into my world and the rest of my books. And so it's after that, about a year later is when Amazon had its started KDP Select, and if you went exclusive with them, you could do all these things like I don't remember, but for a while there.
I'm actually with KDP Select.
Well, no, and that's fine. But for a while there, if you made your book free for a couple of days, all the free downloads counted as sales, and so your book would come off of free. I know, but your book would come off free, and suddenly you'd be like in the top 100 in the whole page store.
Oh, they totally closed that down. That doesn't.
I was complaining about that.
They don't let you do that anymore.
But at that time, I had readers already on the other platforms, so I'd never entertained the idea of going with KDB Select. So I've seen most of the things that are gimmicky that seem to work for like 6 months or 12 months have actually been through that program. So,
Really?
I mean, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. If you see something, take advantage of it. You know, why not?
Yeah.
Probably this last year, the biggest thing I've seen that people are doing is making the bundles. And I'm actually in my first couple of those right now. Jeffrey just started a new one. We've got 4 other fantasy authors, and you can grab our books for 99 cents. But I've definitely heard on some of the other podcasts, especially, you know, those romance people, they're always selling millions of books. But they, you know, there were several people they interviewed over on the self-publishing roundtable that were all part of this like Seals of Summer box set a year ago or something. And it's like this box set. Yeah, it's like it kind of launched all their careers. It was just so hot and so popular, and then, you know, author, you know, it's a way for readers to, they see it's such a great deal, you know, 10 books for 99 cents or something, and so they try it, and if they like it, they go on and check out the other books from the authors. So I'd say that's been this last year has sort of been the big thing. So who knows what it'll be next year? I'm always watching to see.
Yeah, I'd say when the founder of Smashwords invites you to participate, you don't turn them down.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. All right. You guys have a question while I'm trying to figure out what I was going to say? I'm having a senior moment here. Well, okay, here's my question. This is one of the things that I see people struggle with a lot. There's what you've talked about, Lynn. It's kind of the approach I'm taking based on the things that I've seen you talk about it, and, you know, other authors who have. What are your thoughts? I still see authors, though, that are trying to do that. Oh, I got to have a launch, and I got to get it all out there and sell as many books as I can, and they focus all on one book instead of continuing to write. I mean, I think I know what your thoughts are, but I'd like to hear you kind of address that about you know, does that work for self-publishing? Is that really an approach people should be doing, or should they be really focusing?
Okay, I had you cut out there for me on a couple of things. So.
Sorry.
So your question,
I'm basically just. Yeah.
Should you do a launch? Is that kind of the question? A big launch?
Well, I think the sense I've gotten from the things you've said is that you think you're definitely better off to just focus on writing the next book. But I know there's a lot of people that are still focusing on that idea of they'll put one book out there and then they'll just try to market the living hell out of it. Does that work? Is that effective? Or I mean, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's really hard to get anywhere with just one book. There are exceptions, and you see it, and gosh, I wish I knew the author's name. There was just some gal this summer that put out a book in science fiction called, I think it's Fluency. I have to look it up. It's an awesome cover, and I think it's her first book, and it's like right now it's still top 100 or 200 on Amazon after like 5-6 months, and I'm like, I don't know what she did, but it worked. But I think that's really rare. It's really hard to make any momentum. I mean, you might like... with a lot of the sites like BookBub, you need 20 or 30 reviews before you can even get the book accepted. So it's hard to have those ready right at launch, especially if it's your first book. I mean, I know people that have had books out for years, and you know, they're like, I'm still trying to get my 7th review. It's not a relative, so it can really be hard. You know, when you're first starting out, if you're only getting like one sale a week, how are you going to turn those people into reviewers? Yeah. But so you can spend a lot on ads and really do. I never got much out of the blog tours. I think I did get a few reviews out of blog tours, but as far as selling books, it didn't help much. But the thing is, why put all this effort into one book when if you have 5 books out and you put all this effort out, then you have potential to make more than $2 off each customer that you get.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
The only thing I would say is if you get bored with writing and you need a break, you know, go over here and play with the social media or scheme up some plan to, you never know what'll work. But, you know, because sometimes you can say, oh, I should just be writing, I shouldn't be blogging, I shouldn't be doing any of this other stuff. But for a lot of writers, I think it's hard to have more than like 3 or 4 hours a day. If you're lucky, you can actually just focus on writing. I mean, for some people, you just try to get 1,000 words, and that's your brain's fried at that point, and that's all you're going to do on your novel. So.
Kind of work.
I don't think the days it flows and you can't get your mind to shut up.
Yeah.
I always look forward to those days.
Except my mind is, got ADD, so I'm all over the place. So,
Otra vez, no comprendo.
yeah, right. So, you touched on it briefly on so off the topic of the series, but I'm curious, what do you do with social media? What have you found that works? And is there any way that you've found to kind of leverage the advantage of the series through social media? Does that question make any sense? I'm just wondering if there's a special way that you can use social media to take advantage of the leverage you're getting from the series. I have no idea if that made sense.
I think social media, I do Twitter. I'm pretty active there, and I came into Facebook maybe a half a year into things just because everybody said you had to be on Facebook. I was never a huge fan of it, but I like having an author page now and posting updates and stuff, but I really don't try to sell my books there, except when I have a new release, I will announce it, and every now and then for kicks, I'll be like, here's a Smashwords coupon, you can get this for free this weekend. But
before, by the way, thank you.
But it's people see the thing when you start Twitter or something like that is people want to go out and like get a lot of followers right away, and they don't seem to realize that the people that get a lot of followers right away are already celebrities. It's hard to make yourself a celebrity just on Twitter by getting followers. What I do
you gotta have something to tell them.
Yeah, you have to be like awesome already and on TV or a singer or something. But I just put the links in the back of the books, mostly so my readers can come find me if they want to talk about anything. And just the other night I got cursed at because of a cliffhanger. So
yeah, you mentioned that. I saw you mention that. Somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting cursed out by the teenage girl on Twitter in all caps.
I do the same thing in my end of mine. I tell them, you know what, I can take it. If you like it, great. Don't like it, say so. I don't really mind it too much, and it's a good way for them to find you. And I use Facebook pretty much just to keep in touch with the fans, actually. Excuse me, because there's a lot of times where they like to feel like they're involved, at least with me anyway. So I'll go on there and say, who wants to name a fictitious character? I'm looking for a name of a dwarf or a dragon or something. What do you guys think? And within 30 seconds, I've got 50 different suggestions there, which I keep in a handy-dandy notebook. So just something to do.
I've done the same thing, and sometimes I'll even make a free book or something for a reward, like a signed paperback. Those seem to go over pretty well. Although if you do that, be careful about those international people. I like to make it open to everybody, but I am surprised at how many international readers I seem to have now. And
I learned the hard way with those Goodreads giveaways. I thought, oh, it'd be cool to, I keep an eye on the blog. I've got a little map that shows where everybody that visits the blog comes from. And okay, well, there's a lot from France, Germany, Spain, Ireland. I'll make the giveaway open to them. No problem. And everything goes fine until you get a winner from Ireland, and it costs you $20 to get a freaking $4 book over there. I'm like, okay, we got to limit that big time.
Australia is even worse. And I had one in Africa once. I think that was the most expensive book I've ever sent.
Yeah.
But
I sent one to Romania one time. I don't know if you've ever filled out a Romanian address, but they're like 4 lines longer than anyone else's address. I confused the person at the post office. He's like, I've never had to write on every line before. So,
and those customs forms are not very big either. You're like, I can barely write this person's name on the name line.
Yep.
But so I think social media is
that's not
kind
a
of
problem I have yet.
Oh, there's the dog in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Bathing.
Oh, you see him? Oh, yeah, on the bed. Yeah. Oh, I
There's like a leg up.
Yeah, that's him lying with his head on my pillow, I think. Yeah, there he is. So, all right, and I had a question, and again, it just fell right out of my head. All right, when do you guys jump in?
Well, I was just going to say for the social media.
Wait, no, I know what it was. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, if you do put it in the end of your books, you'll get your followers that way. It's really not very useful to go to other authors and say, please like my page, which I get all the time. And I'm like, I haven't read your book. Why do you want me to like your page? I'm never going to be back.
Yeah.
So, and it's actually, you can get penalized. I think it still is on Facebook, where if you have like 5,000 likes, but nobody's interacting with your stuff, it's just even less likely that those things that you say are going to show up in people's feeds. There's an interactivity element to it, and you kind of get rewarded, and your post gets seen by more people if more people like it and comment it. So
Yeah, and the
definitely don't
problem is
want,
they don't like and comment unless they don't say, yeah, it's, yeah. Um, so I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I would think a series would help this, but is about community building. I mean, talking about with a series is what you're building of the readers as a community. They love these characters, they love the place, they want to know more about it. Can you talk about how that, I know you've had a fan base and they participate a lot, and I know you meant they have their own chat board, or I'm sorry, I don't know the terms very well. But I'm just curious how, if you did anything to kind of start that, or if that was something that just sort of grew out of the grassroots from the readers themselves. How much do they do themselves?
Yeah, no, that's actually something that grew out of the social media. So I would say I think I can remember the time on Facebook I made some post or another, and then a couple of people were commenting in the responses and saying, basically somebody said, well, we need a forum to talk about these things. And then one of those readers went over and made a fan forum for the series. And, it's not as active now. Actually, there's a chat room, so a lot of people just bypass the forum and now and go into the chat room. But it's less active with the series now that's over. When I had the cliffhangers and, is so-and-so going to get together with so-and-so, there was a lot more for them to speculate about. They can just finish reading the series. But and it was great, and the forum, they put up a fan art section, and I had people drawing my characters, and I think it's all up. I have all that on Pinterest if anybody wants to look for me there. So it's really neat, and some of these people have gone on to meet each other in real life and become friends and do vacations and stuff together. So
wow.
it's really it's fun to meet people with common interests, and it's really neat that as an author you can end up, whether it's your intention or not, being a way for these people to meet each other and make really good friends. So. And it's really rewarding. I think it's it's great to make money. No, nothing wrong with that. But seeing that people really enjoy your books and, like I said, make friendships, and I think I had people get married. I had a couple that.
Oh man, that's awesome!
That met on Twitter. That they were talking back and forth, and I was kind of that middle person, and they ended up talking offline or something. And
that's awesome. All right, let me look at my questions and see if I have. So all of these things that we're talking about with a series, I mean, I guess I know there are people out there that are writing standalone novels, and they're probably saying, crap. Oh, that can't be right. I mean, can you make a go of it with a standalone novel? I mean, what is it? Totally hopeless, or
it's tough.
What are your thoughts?
I would find a way. I would almost, if there's any way to make them related. Like I was saying earlier, the romance people, these books have like nothing in common other than all the people that are finding romance are loosely related or work in the same Navy SEAL squadron or something. I don't know what it is.
Town, or they're
the
all
same town
or something. Yeah.
So it's just, even if you want to write standalones, maybe if you can find some loose way to kind of connect them.
Yeah.
And if not, it's just maybe that's just accept that it's going to be harder for you. And like I said, I don't write the most traditional popular stuff, and you just kind of accept that, okay, I'm probably never going to be a New York Times bestseller.
Right.
But, it is possible to find an audience and make a living. I would definitely make sure that in the back of the books you point people to other books, and maybe you want to try some coupons. What's one thing you can do with Smashwords is offer them the next book for 99 cents or something if they use the coupon, and whatever you can think of to get somebody who just finished the book, they're most likely to be your fan right there, to go on and try more of the books. I would definitely do that.
What I ended up having to do when I created the new series is I actually put chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the first book of the new series at the end of the book of the end of the last series, so that way when they get to the end they're going, well, I know this so much for this series is over. He looks like he's put something else in here. Let's see what that is, and try and kind of make it introduced to the next series, whatnot. But my second series, even though it's a series, each book in the series is a standalone novel, set in the same world, but it's its own little storyline. I'm not trying to stretch the storyline over a couple different books like my first 3 trilogy was. This one is just. This one is just like the first book was just about a group of dwarves. Second one was the human couple coming back in and dealing with some dragon problems, stuff like that. But it's still set in the same magical kingdom, but they're completely different. But you better believe I will put a link from book 1 over to book 2 just to say, hey, by the way, the adventure continues. Check out whatever it is. So.
Right. Well, that's kind of how Terry Pratchett does it with Discworld. I mean, it's all one world, and people are kind of related, and there are certain characters that have like their own books, but it's never, with the exception of the very first two of the series, it's never you need read this book and then read this book, and you can't get the whole story arc until you read X number of books. So it sounds like that's the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Is you put it all in that same world.
Yeah,
So
I learned that mistake when I released the second book of my first trilogy. I didn't make it a standalone. I was like, okay, I assumed you read book 1 before you read book 2. I've had people that jumped in and said like, okay, well, the book's good. You need to read book 1 first, or this one's not going to make any sense. And I'm like, oh, damn, maybe I should have changed something about that. So I learned my lesson in number 3.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's kind of where I am, is that it's an overriding story arc across 7 books. So, I mean, I'm trying to, you can read this, put in some, things to guide you along, but then all the beta readers are like, oh, God, too much exposition. I know what happened in the first book, blah, blah, blah. So it's, it's a struggle.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to put a line or two introducing a character, but you do not need to go into pages and pages, a summary of what happened to the previous one. I've read a few books that are like that.
Yeah, well, that was a mistake I made, and I have been very diligently editing all that crap out. So, so you guys, you have more questions?
You haven't lived until a beta reader points that out.
Yeah. Well, that was, they were all like going, oh, it was really good once I got past the first 6 chapters. Fix the first 6 chapters and you got a great book. Like, oh, God. So, Lindsay, anything else you want to share with us? I mean, what are your, just a quick summary, kind of what are the best practices that you've come up with?
Well, I was going to add on to what Jeffrey
Your best
said
practices
for putting an excerpt at the end. I think it's a good idea. I would say not too long of an excerpt, because I have seen a lot of people complain about the thing with the ebooks is that, on your Kindle it tells you exactly how much long, and you think you still have 20% left of the book, and then you get to the end and you're kind of pissed off because the book ended and like, what's all this other stuff in the back? But I do think a short excerpt can be a great idea. That's actually what I did to start selling my first book. Is I happened to have this short story that I'd submitted to like Sword and Sorceress magazine or something, and almost got in. And so, I decided to get a cover done of that, and that was the first thing I gave away for free before, because when I only had one book out, I didn't want to make my only book free. And that's sort of the first thing I did that really helped with sales. And I had the free short story had the same characters as in my Emperor's Edge, what was to become a series. And I put the short story and then a little excerpt for the book from like a kind of an exciting part where there was some monster breathing down their neck and they had some witty banter or something going on. So a little bit, just a couple pages of showing it all. And that, at the time I didn't know how to get that free on Amazon, so that's a bummer. But I had it free on Barnes & Noble and Apple, and that's eventually what helped me start selling there. So that was a good thing.
2010 is a good year. That's when I released my first book.
I was so close to the end of it I shouldn't count it. It was like December 24th or something when I published my book, but hey, you got to remember your anniversary for later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about it. I hadn't even heard about it in 2010. I didn't have a clue. So I didn't really know much about it until I met Lindsay at that dinner party for the Paleo dinner group.
Where of course that's where you go to meet writers,
I had just heard about it, and then I saw you on the Paleo thing and was like, oh, I'm going to talk to her.
I'm not touching that one.
Yeah, no, it's a dinner. It's a gluten-free, dairy-free thing. You don't want to know.
Oh, I know all about gluten-free. My stepdad, celiac, so.
Yep, that's me. That's me.
Yeah, I think
anybody else got...
I think I divulged pretty much all my tips there, but yeah, if anybody's curious and wants to leave a comment, try to check the comments and answer questions, and next week we can talk to somebody else.
Yes,
somebody that doesn't talk very much, maybe.
Yeah.
Joe, thanks for volunteering.
No.
Yeah, I guess that'll be me. Yeah, everyone else take a step back. All right, we'll see what I sound like next week.
Oh, you'll be great. You'll be great. All right. Well, Lindsay, thank you very, very much. Do we have the website up yet?
It's just sffmarketing.com. There's nothing on it, but we'll put, when we publish this episode, we'll put something up there.
Okay.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
and
then I
I
assume.
can embed the video, but all right, I'm getting ready to hit the stop broadcast, so we are signing off. We will see you guys.
All right.
We will talk to you guys next week.
All right.